Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our summer 2021 Satanic Panic series with the 1957 film Night of the Demon, a.k.a. Curse of the Demon. This is Castle of Horror, episode 341. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the Pen America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Hello, Drew.
Hello, hello. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from the one and only Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hi.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Now okay. I'm gonna have to cut this stammering because I misplaced the one paragraph that I had. So hang on just a second. I gotta paste it back in. Don't worry. Okay, Night of the Demon, also known as Curse of the Demon, is a 1957 British horror film produced by Hal Chester and Frank Bevis, directed by, honestly, one of the greatest horror directors ever, Jacques Tourneur, starring Dana Andrews, Peggy Cummins, and Niall MacGinnis. It is adapted from an M.R. James story, Casting the Runes. And the storyline concerns an American psychologist who travels to England to investigate a satanic cult suspected in more than one death. So this is a film. This is fitting into what we've called our summer Satanic Panic series, where the original idea is we watch a bunch of movies that stem from the Satanic Panic, which is, you know, the society's fear of the influence of Satan. But we've allowed ourselves to stream a little far and wide, and this is just a hard-ass demonology movie, and one of the best, and it's one that Drew is a huge proponent of. So to get our opening thoughts, I think we start with Drew, and so let's go Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew, I mean, you know, you can start anywhere you like, but here we are discussing Night of the Demon.
I am so happy that I was finally able to strong arm everybody into watching this movie, because I think it is truly one of the best demonology based horror movies ever made. It's still got an influence on other movies of this type that reverberate. So I do think it actually ties into what we're talking about, because this is like a pre-Exorcist, pre-Rosemary's Baby, you know, like what these kind of movies were like prior to that. And I don't think you would have had those movies without this movie. And, you know, The Devil Rides Out, of course. But, you know, I think this is a fantastic artistic film with an interesting production history, and kind of a part of pop culture. Like the demon from this movie, really, you see him crop up from now and then in, you know, as a toy, as a pop culture reference in you know, cartoons or comic books. And I always think of it, you know, the image of this demon being on the cover of the Rocky Erickson album, The Evil One. So like I just think that this movie is something that absolutely reverberates and continues. No, it's not exactly Satanic Panic. This is before that, and I don't think I wouldn't say anything before Rosemary's Baby, or really honestly before The Exorcist. I don't know that they're a true Satanic Panic horror movie, but this is definitely, you know, an important building block. And I am, again, so excited to finally be talking about this, because I adore this movie.
Thank you very much. Julia, I thought that you were just extremely rapt by this movie. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. I mean, there's just so many beautiful things about it. The sets, the sharpness, the angles. There's just like some great cinematographical, whatever the word is, decisions. And The performances are great. It's really interesting. The only complaints I had were either a couple things where it felt like maybe something got left on the cutting room floor, so it didn't really make sense. And then, I thought that the actual demon was laugh worthy, but then it turns out the director wasn't even involved with the actual demon. So I can't blame him for that. But but it's also, I mean, I appreciated the laugh. Actually, I thought it was. It's a really funny, cute demon, but it kind of it takes you a little bit out. But it's just neat. The smoke effects are great. It's just really interesting. So I really enjoyed it.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Tony, any opening thoughts?
Yeah, I really like this movie. I think I'd only seen it in pieces, so it was really cool to just sit down and watch it all the way through. Like Drew said, I'm gonna mirror some of his, some of the stuff he was saying. I think you can see touchstones of this also in the pacing and the kind of how it plays out in Drag Me to Hell.
Oh yeah,
I can't prove that Raimi was doing that, but it has that feel, the way it's all laid out. I found myself going back to that. The demon, is turned up in videos, and just I'd forgotten about which ones it is, but I also go, oh yeah, it's that demon, right?
Yeah.
It's just an iconic piece of work, as well as just I want to get into it later, but the smoke effects, the I would say that the special effects leading up to the demon's appearance in black and white just look amazing. It's done so well. It kind of it overshadows when we actually see the demon, which looks cool. But it kind of, depending on your views on it, it could look dated. There's going to be some people who go, well, that may or may not work for me. But I think the special effects leading up to that and the reveal each time just blew me away. I just love that look and feel. The cast is great. Holden is, kind of borderline jerk guy.
Yeah.
But that kind of plays with his character. I just think it's just really well done, well paced. It made me want to, search out the 95-minute version just to check it out. There's various prints of that to be found. It works, and it's just done really. It's just so well done. It looks beautiful in black and white. I really dig it. And it also, I think it probably influenced a lot of, we talk a lot about horror comics, but especially horror comics in the West have that same kind of feeling. They would be much short stories, right? You usually get them in anthologies. But I think that kind of moralistic mystery twist is a hallmark of a lot of Western horror comics that I read in the 70s and 80s, and it just had that feel. So yeah, fantastic movie through and through for me.
There's a lot of elements here. First of all, this is one of those movies that I was seeing elements of it for many years before I actually watched the movie. Like last Christmas, Tony, you and I did a hangout episode on Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster, and that turned out to be the one with the little bald, pointy-eared guy and the tall queen in a headdress, where they're
Right.
and they say snide things as they launch their thing against the earth. And for years I'd seen them, and then finally I saw the movie and I was like, finally they have context. And same thing here. This demon, you're exactly right. I would see pictures of him in all these different things, the kind of stuff that you would get in the 80s, where they would just show pictures of monsters, and usually it was like snippets of the she creature or Frankenstein and the space monster and this guy, the demon in this one. So it's really cool to watch this and have all of that sort of fall into place. And in fact, one of the first things I'd like to discuss before we even really get into the story, and we don't have to walk through it completely, but one of the first things I'd like to discuss is this movie has two names. It has two lengths that might not be related to the change of the title. In other words, I don't know if looking for the title is going to get you the longer version. In the Danny Peary Cult Movies book, he refers to a scene that adds running time that we don't have here. And there's a lot of controversy among the people making it, where they basically sniped at one another for years about it. So I'm going to turn this towards Drew. Drew, you don't have to. I didn't assign anything like this, but I'm just curious. Is there any truth to all the hype about just the incredible kind of acrobatics that this movie went through getting to be the version that we saw? If that makes any sense.
So, first off, the thing about that, like, I have to go back to something Julia said before I get into all of that. The thing about the demon, the writer of the movie, the screenwriter who actually wanted to direct it, didn't get to. He absolutely hated seeing the demon at all. Like he wanted to do it like a Val Lewton film where you never saw a demon at all. Jacques Tourneur wanted to compromise, especially when they initially they approached Ray Harryhausen actually about doing the demon effects, and ultimately he had to pass on it because he was too busy doing, I believe, the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
Yeah, the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, and yeah, that was it. Correct.
And what Tourneur wanted was he didn't want to see the demon at the beginning. He was okay with seeing the demon at the very end, which I actually think probably would have been better because it would have left it ambiguous till the very end of the movie.
Well, he's quoted as saying, "The scenes where we really see the demon were shot without me, all except one. I shot the sequence in the woods where Andrews is pursued by the sort of a cloud, but everything else it seemed like he wasn't involved with."
I've seen that quote before, and but I'm saying like it's been contradicted because of stuff else that I have read, and I'm not saying that that's not accurate, but the thing is about this movie and the production history of this movie, and particularly the stuff about the demon, is there's kind of a twisty turny, lots of people telling different versions of how it ended up. I think because the demon itself ended up being kind of iconic, I think there is, far be it to me to say a producer knows better than the creatives. And like, frankly, again, the screenwriter said that if he ever saw the producer, he would have shot him.
Which is a remarkable thing to say. I mean,
like he hated the final movie so much, which is absurd because this is a beautiful movie. But because the demon ended up becoming so iconic, I think you kind of have to give a point to Chester that there was something to what he was saying. I do agree with the idea that I think you should have left the demon out of the very beginning of the movie, though. As far as the two cuts of the movie, again, so far as I know, I'm by no means saying that I am the authority on the production of this movie. I'm just going to tell you stuff I've read over the years. There is an American version, which is actually virtually identical to the English version, except for the title. And then there's what they call the continental version, which is what they played in Europe. And that one is 10 minutes longer. And now I have seen both versions, but I've seen this movie so many times, I'm not going to lie. Like, it started to kind of blend together to the today on Amazon, even though it was called Curse of the Demon, which leads me to believe it was the American cut. But
and the reason, just to interrupt for just a second, the reason the curse, this is silly, but it was really this. There was another movie coming out simultaneously in America called Night of the Iguana, and so the American distributors changed Night of the Demon into Curse of the Demon because they didn't want people to get confused when they went to the movies about which one was their movie and which one was the movie with Elizabeth Taylor, and so they changed it to Curse of the Demon. That's really why it's called.
Elizabeth Taylor was the one that had no demons in it.
Right, right. That's right.
Unless she was actually a demon, then dun dun dun.
Well, she might have been a succubus if you ask people, but
fair.
That there, honestly, I would love to see like a very lengthy documentary about the making of the movie, because this has got a really fascinating production history. I mean, more than we can really go into for the duration of this podcast, but like it's just a cool history behind a movie that ended up being great.
Very cool. I think there is actually a nonfiction book about it. So this has been one of those that people have been writing about. As I mentioned, Danny Peary, in his book on cult movies, he dedicated a chapter to this, and anybody of our generation, that was a book that everybody got, just like Golden Turkey Awards. Like everybody got their hands on cult movies. So you probably heard about this long before you had a chance to see it. So okay, let's get into it a little bit. We open just like and by the way, this film in many ways plays like a thriller, and like a thriller, it opens in media res with a sort of an action scene going on, because this Professor Harrington, is very afraid, and he is on the run from a curse that he wants lifted, and so we see him racing in the night to the stately mansion of Dr. Carswell, who is played by Niall MacGinnis. And so Professor Harrington goes to Dr. Carswell and says, please, lift this curse on me. And Carswell goes, something to the effect of, "I'll give that some thought." But he actually asks,
"Well, do you have the? Yeah, do you have the
"Yeah,
parchment?"
do you have the parchment?" And so we learn that one who is cursed probably has some sort of parchment that's very important to the curse. And he
And
goes,
so he
"No, it's
goes,
been destroyed." Yeah,
yeah, he says the parchment got burned up. I couldn't get it or whatever. And then he's like, "Okay, bye, go home, bye."
yeah. And
I was like,
immediately,
"Uh-oh."
straight up, early in this movie, he goes outside. He goes to his own house. He wrecks his car. He's running around in a bunch of high tension wires, and then out of space, out of the sky above him, comes first a plume of cloudy smoke that just sort of undulates towards them, and then turns into a really harrowing looking demon. That Tony, I'm sure the animation of the demon must have been fascinating to you. This thing that is sort of walking through the sky towards him, and then you have a close up, and then it like reaches out and grabs us. That's practically a James Bond opening for this movie, because we set
Right.
up all this stuff going on. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean the close-ups are what you usually see in videos and such. Often, I'm seeing it, if I'm not mistaken, maybe it's just been edited in things I've seen where people are playing it in the background of, like, bands who have, a visual element, projection. You'll often see it played with Haxan, like the demon from that, like, kind of mashed up together, and they actually work pretty well together. It looks
Sure.
cool together, because that's an iconic demon as well.
Oh yes, good
but
grief, yes.
yeah, I can see why they wouldn't want the demon, like, to leave it more to your imagination. Even though I think the practical effect demon close up looks kind of cool, the parts where they pull it back, especially close to the end, but the smoke reveal is just amazing every time.
Yeah.
That kind of cloud lightning look, but it's fire.
Yeah.
And the aftermath, again, especially at the end, is pretty amazing. I like it a lot. But it sticks in your mind though, regardless, because people have used that imagery
Yes.
a lot.
Well, like I say, I just thought it
came
was
out.
kind of funny, but I didn't think it was bad. I just thought, like, especially at the end when he's batting the guy, he's like spanking him basically. It's just funny to
he's
me.
like ripping him apart. It's just
Yeah.
ferocious.
It's
That's not
really
how it looks
bizarre.
on my
There's so
TV.
many ways this demon appears. The head and shoulders demon, where you get a close look at him, really, you can talk yourself into anything, by the way. I mean, like, Danny Peary had decided that the demon was so preposterous looking that he came all the way out on the other side and decided, no, this is a scary demon. I find this demon quite frightening. I personally feel like the close up head and shoulders model doesn't do anything for me. I have difficulty viewing it as a real living creature. I think the weirdly moving thing that steps through the sky towards the people that it's chasing, that is a weird creature, and I do believe
Yeah.
that one.
I really
I think
I really like the part where they're the high tension wires and all of it coming together.
Yes.
I think that's really effective. It does remind you eventually they would kind of do kind of similar shots on like the X-Files. You would get some of that tension filled like shot setup. Not that it was, that this influenced that, but just the way some of the shot setups would be, it kind of reminded me of that. Like, but again, that's part of why we say, hey, go watch some black and white cool movies, because you can get some awesome inspiration like this.
Absolutely. Drew, what were you going to say?
Drew, what were you saying?
I think that, I kind of fall in between Tony and Jason on this, is that I think the demon looks it works for me. I always find it to be unsettling because it's kind of surreal. Like it does look a bit puppety, but because it's supposed to be this sort of ethereal creature of fire and smoke, my brain sort of accepts it in a way that if it was like too perfect of an effect, I don't think it would work for me, because it is supposed to be something that's not of this world. Like a good example of something else that's like this that works for me is there's a part in the 1990 version of It where Pennywise comes out of a drain and he pushes the drain outward almost like he's Bugs Bunny or something, and it's done with stop motion. And when I see that, I'm like, you know what, that's actually perfect for the kind of character this is. Whereas if it was like CGI and it looked too glossy and too slick, because it's supposed to be this otherworldly being, I think having it be a little bit more having that kind of like artifice to it, really, I don't know, like my brain accepts it more.
So I totally am with you on the full body demon. It's the close-up one that I'm not getting there, but that's okay. That's totally fine. But I'm totally with you when it's sort of, Peary describes it as appearing to be riding an invisible bicycle, but in a way it's just running in slow motion, which is just strange. It's weird. It's a weird looking image, and if I were running through the woods and I saw that, its jerkiness, its herky jerkiness would seem so otherworldly that it would be just genuinely terrifying. And it's funny, by the way, to think of the fact that we also have been watching a lot of Japanese monster movies, and in those, think about how never for a moment do we go, gosh, does Gigan look like a real creature that one might encounter in the mountains, or is he just a thing that we accept as existing? It's
and I think that they're similar. If I say anything that even sounds remotely critical, I'm more talking about people, not me, might look at it and go, well, I mean, you said, hey, the close-up one doesn't really work for you. And that's kind of what I'm talking about.
That is me. Yeah.
I think it looks cool.
Yeah.
Like Drew said, it doesn't look hyper real, but I don't mind that. I guess in my mind, I'm just predisposed to how some people might take it, but I think it looks neat and cool. But I dig the other ones as well. I dig all the elements leading up to that, because I think there's some really strong stuff in that I've seen. Again, I hate to do that argument, but I've seen CG stuff that doesn't look nearly as cool as that.
Absolutely.
And I'm like I said, CG works for me in a lot of cases, but the fact that this is 58 and it looks like that, hell yeah. That's amazing. I dig on that so much.
We also, in these scenes, we get a feel for the world that we're going to be moving in. These are a bunch of what we presume that the rest of the film will be like this too. It doesn't necessarily have to be. We might meet none of these characters again, but it's already setting up Dr. Carswell, who is he's the bad guy, but he's pretty affable. He lets you come in his house and talk to him, and listens to your
affably
pleas.
evil is what.
Yes, he's affably evil.
Yeah, I mean, considering that this is a Satanic Panic movie, I think this lends more towards what we talked about when we found out who the true Satanists were, or the people who call themselves Satanists, or anybody who's within that realm. It wasn't metalheads who were listening to whatever you want to say, even Venom, which said, hey, in league with Satan, right?
Yeah.
These weren't the people who really run the show.
Right.
It's people like Carswell who go, yeah, man, I'm into the occult. Like,
Right.
Golden Dawn style people who really were actually running things, right?
Yeah.
Who were rich, who were affable, who could say, yeah, come over to dinner. Oh, by the way, the devil and the occult, here's some white magic, here's some black magic. Don't cross me. But,
Right.
we can share brandy and a cigar.
Yeah.
Let me
Because-
show you how I create storms.
Yeah.
Right.
And by the
Because
way, have
he
some of my
doesn't
mom's homemade ice cream.
Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, because he doesn't have to be menacing. In fact, all the people who take themselves too seriously about it are also kind of dull and boring and not exactly how it is. This is a guy who's truly in his element. He doesn't have anything to fear that he knows of from any of these people because he is wealthier than they are. He's more powerful. And why not have a bit of fun, sometimes at their expense, or if you're truly not a problem to him, then no, you just don't cross him, right? Because you're nothing.
He is
You don't know this
worried
magic, and
about
I think
this
that's
investigation.
part
He is what?
of it that's cool.
He is actually worried about this investigation though, because he keeps bumping off the investigators.
true.
Well, and he's worried
that's what
about the
I'm
actual
saying.
demon.
But that's what I'm saying is he starts bumping people off when they get too close.
Yeah.
But he has this idea of, hey, I'm so powerful and affluent that I can do this. I can move through this world. I have been doing this, and I'm not really going to be worried about it. And this is, again, the people that the Satanic Panic movement was warning you about are not the people that you actually need to be worried about if you were to take it seriously.
Yeah.
And Carswell is that affluent, hey, come over. I cursed you. You're going to die. Like, while you're here, let's share a good meal and some alcohol and, kick back because you're gone in a few days. Why do I have to care?
It's
fascinating.
and that's certainly
It's
based
amazing.
on, certain personages in Hollywood, like, Aleister Crowley and all these other guys that people would talk about as being sort of connected
Yeah.
spiritualists who wielded power and so forth.
And
Go
it's
ahead,
a
Joy.
very it's a very fine line. Like I was saying to Jason, he was explaining to me that zombies don't mean the same thing in this time period as they do to us now, because when he says
You're
the
talking about the main character who comes
professor,
to visit
the new
Dana,
professor,
Dr. John Holden.
Dr. John. Yes, Dr. Holden, right. Dr. Holden says he works basically to debunk, but he says he works with parapsychology, and he's like, spirits, fortune tellers, mind readers, and zombies. And I was like, one of these things is not like the other. And Jason said, no, zombies at that. Explain what zombies were at that time.
Well, I mean,
Jay.
basically, and any of you guys can correct me if I don't get it completely right, but the concept that they would know of zombies would be a sort of half-life, a person
it'd be the
in
voodoo.
Haiti,
It would be the voodoo version of
right,
this.
voodoo version, where your brain
Where-
has been pointed towards making you into basically a mindless slave.
But it's not that
right.
you've died and come back.
Not that you've died and come back.
No,
not at
least
least
not in
primarily.
although the ritual would often involve it's a little dicier because there's folklore to separate out, but a lot of times the drug could cause that kind of, it would cause a near death, and the ritual would be, oh look, they're bringing him back to life, which kind of got why
my point is, it's not like
mixed up.
brains,
Yeah.
like zombies, the undead walking
No,
around
no,
coming
no.
out of grave sites, right?
Yeah.
So okay, so to me, there is such a fine line between just believing that there's you're connected to the energy of the universe and you can access that with meditation and do other kinds of hypnosis, that kind of thing, versus suddenly we have demons and all that. And it's such a fine line, and that's where the line is, where it gets scary, is because you can be like all oh hey, let's use a Ouija board, let's have a seance, but that doesn't mean that you want to now suddenly have demons coming after people. You know what I mean? So that's where it becomes horror, is when you go, oh crap, I have tapped into something very dark here. That was not what I meant to do. And that dude totally does mean to do that. What's his name?
Carswell.
Right.
Yeah. But that's also why there are so many warnings about that fine line, right?
Yeah.
hey, don't do those things because if you don't know what you're doing, this could be really bad for you.
Right.
Mhm.
All of those repercussions that can happen. That's that's why, I mean, depending on, you know, how Holden you are, right? Like if you are very much him, it's all just bunk, haha.
Yeah.
Well, this
Or
is, you know,
you could go, I'm not gonna really mess with that. I'm kind of,
Right.
like I said, I'm kind of in the middle. Like I don't feel like, you know what? I'm okay with not a Ouija board for me.
Yeah.
But you know, whatever, you know,
And
that's just me.
I'm totally his mom. I'm totally what's his name again? Coswell? I just keep forgetting the
Carswell.
guy's
Carswell.
Carswell.
Yep.
I'm totally Carswell's mom. I'm like, this is really interesting. Listen to this guy. He knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, good.
I think the you know the Holden Carswell interplay is so fun, you know, outside of it being kind of a, you know, you talked about the James Bond thing, like he is very much a James Bond villain in some ways, but it also
Sure.
like that skeptic versus believer
Yes.
thing is like the interplay at the Halloween party, you know, that might be the best scene in the whole thing, and he's dressed like a clown.
Yes.
I just
Yeah, it's amazing. That
Really
that's
strange.
what
Really
really
interesting
sets
decision.
both of their characters up. It solidifies them so much in how they're gonna play with each other. And how their psyches each work. And just also, if you're a skeptic, when this guy says like, no, it's all real, man. I just do this as a matter of course. Like, look how fun this is. You guys, you know, you do some black magic and some white magic. Yeah, sure. You know,
Yeah.
these kids are having fun. This is great.
Yeah.
Kids
You
are
know,
having
it
fun
leads to like the
until the
storm
storm
and everything
starts.
like that. Right, but it leads
well, it
to the
also kind of
storm.
shows you that he doesn't think that he is like Carswell doesn't think he's a monster. He's like, I have a
course not.
Halloween party for the kids, and we serve them ice cream, and I give them puppies, and you
Right.
know, like here's a chocolate bar, and like he's I actually think the warmth that he has towards these kids is fake.
Yeah.
Like this is a complicated bad guy. Like
Right.
he's completely okay with sending someone's soul to be torn apart by a demon.
Right.
But like, you know, like it's because those people have inconvenienced him and inconvenienced his possibly inconvenienced his status in society and
But he
everything.
also
Right.
you
fears
know,
the
like,
demon. He's kind of like those guys who sacrifice to like King Kong. You know what I mean? It's like they actually are like, okay, I don't want this demon coming after me. So because he's very afraid that
Well,
he's going to get the parchment handed back to him.
Yeah.
oh
well, he
yeah,
understands
he
the
knows how dangerous
repercussions.
it
I mean,
is.
that's the thing, is it's the same as anything. If you know how to use a gun and somebody has a gun to your head,
Yes.
you're not immune to fear from a gun because you know what that gun can do. This is when he's afraid, it's because he truly understands the repercussions of exactly what the demon will do to him.
Right.
And I
But
think
it's also why he is so nonchalant. Once he thinks all the power is on his side, why should he worry about anything? Because he helps control this power. But anybody who reaches that level of power also knows to respect that power.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference.
And the
Only
reality
a
is
fool
that
would
very
go,
few
"Hey,
people-
demons are cool." That's the difference between Satanic Panic stratifications, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
The kids who go, "I love Satan because metal tells me he's cool." The people like Carswell know that's ridiculous. You should actually fear this. There's a respect that you don't have that you need to attain to, if you're going to become what I have become. And that's the true difference in how you look at that in society. And his fear is based on, I know what happens. He may have even seen that. I'm sure he's seen it, like
He has
the
to have seen
aftermath
this
of it
demon
before.
work at least once. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and like I say, like a James Bond villain, and the writer here is a writer who has been a writer on a number of different Hitchcock thrillers, which also often involve, you know,
It feels
quirky
like that, too.
characters, and yeah, it has a very
Yeah.
Hitchcocky feel. You know, like a Bond villain, he generally very rarely does somebody really get close to endangering him. So it is unnerving when somebody, when this guy Dana Andrews as John Holden finally manages to get really kind of close to hurting Dr. Carswell. He earns a great deal of respect. I should mention, by the way, speaking of James Bond and Hitchcock, Ken Adam is the production designer on this. Now he's the production designer who gave James Bond. I mean, there's a lot of production design that's kind of invisible in this movie. It's beautiful, but it's not the kind of thing that he would wind up doing, because Ken Adam was the guy who gave James Bond the look that we know as James Bond. I mean, he maybe personally was almost as responsible as Sean Connery for creating what that, the kind of like pop culture forming thing that James Bond became, because he created the Fort Knox set, he created the empty volcano set, and You Only Live Twice. He created the gigantic submarine in The Spy Who Loved Me. Basically, every single sort of just gonzo gigantic 60s set that Austin Powers wound up aping, Ken Adam did all that stuff, and he's the production designer here. But here, it's all more understated. There's not a single moment in this where you go, wow, look at what an amazing set that is. But it all looks beautiful all the
I
time.
actually did say that several times. I was like, "That's gorgeous house. That's a gorgeous," like the way that they set that up. I mean, I was quite stricken by how pretty, how beautiful all the sets, the practical sets, and like the just the the houses, the way everything was set out, the lines like that they use it whenever he's just like looking down like four hallways, and it feels like The Shining, where you're just like, what? Everything goes on and on. There's another time when in the library when he's just been given the parchment that he looks off and it looks super like you said, James Bondy, where it's just kind of, it's very much like he's in a trance of some kind, right? For that, just for that second.
Yeah.
There's all this great stuff that they do.
Well,
It's amazing.
those little tricks, like the one that you're talking about, they do to establish the supernatural, but with
Mhm.
not really having like special effects. It's very reminiscent of The Haunting in a way. Like there's a point where Dr. Holden comes back to his hotel and he's walking in the hallway, and there's just like this sort of weird buzzing sound
Yeah.
in the hallway, and it like all that stuff is like super creepy and super effective, and doesn't there's not really a whole lot to it, like, and it's kind of how they get away with having a monster movie in which you only see the monster twice,
Mhm.
really. Like I can't really think of another movie of this
Well,
time
because the
period.
monster is not just the demon; it's also Carswell.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
no argument. And Carswell is such a fascinating character, that you're happy to spend time with him. I also think like the side characters, like I love the crew of like parapsychologists that Holden is
Yeah,
hanging
let's talk
with.
about them, because instead of walking our way through the plot, tell me about the cast and the stuff that. So he winds up with a Scooby Gang of sorts. Um,
Yeah,
so
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 he's
let's talk about them. First of all, Joanna, the first girl he meets on the plane on the way to England. She's the
That
niece.
scene was funny.
How do we like her? How do we like Joanna, played by
I
Peggy
like her
Cummins?
because she's the Mulder to his Scully.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I kept saying, "Don't scully me."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for real.
Yeah.
And in a
This
way, this
actress is.
also does feel very much like a precursor to the X-Files because of the way this relationship is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept running through that. Like I said, some of the shots and the pacing, I would, this would be something after viewing it again, all the way through, where if I could ask anybody involved to go, hey, it's Night of the Demon, right? Just to see if they went, oh, of course.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Because of just some of the interplay, and the setups have a very similar feel. If it wasn't an influence, I would be surprised. But who knows? There's been a lot of stuff, since '58. But in the time between there were a lot of influences, so it could be residual. But it's nice to see those ripples in the media that you enjoy, in the movies that you watch.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So there's Joanna. There's also a couple of people from the museum, and I have to say I didn't really commit them to memory. Can you keep his Scooby Gang straight, Drew? And it's okay if you can't.
There is I want to say Irish professor who is like, so the relationships are broken down. There is Professor O'Brien, who is kind of in between Holden, and there is an Indian professor, a Professor Kumar, who is a
a
believer.
non-Indian and brown face, by the way,
A
which
non-Indian
irritating
Indian.
Yes.
to me.
Yeah.
That guy's name is
Yeah.
Peter
Yeah, that
Elliott, and he
wasn't-
stuck around for years.
I
Yeah.
didn't see, I didn't
Not-
see the
not-
point of
That's
that.
another one where you watch and go, "Ooh, okay,
Oh,
58."
really?
They're giving us
We don't do
not,
that
not
anymore.
not very PC.
But look, just to
the
be
interplay-
sure, this is 1957. I mean, as
Right.
Aziz Ansari was pointing out in Master of None, Fisher Stevens did his role in Johnny Five, whatever that was called, Short Circuit, and that was like 1986
No,
or
it's
something.
not.
So
But the thing
right.
here was that it wasn't necessary. It was not
Yeah.
for humor. It was just, let's have an Indian guy, but let's not hire one. You know,
yeah, because it's an
this is what's-
international bunch of scientists. That was why.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So it's just kind of silly, and it's like, again, you kind of like, why didn't they know how to hire actors of color back then? But anyway, yes, it's fine.
I agree with you on that, but I do think the relationship dynamic here is interesting because
Mhm.
you have one guy who is like, I believe in the devil, to the point won't
Right.
even drink. He's like, I
Yeah.
believe in the devil, I believe in evil, I believe in all of it. And then you have
Mhm.
another guy, the guy from Ireland, who is kind of in between, like he's agnostic about it, so to speak. And then you have Holden, who is basically like it's all bunk, and so you have these three different worldviews that are made up by these three men, and they will stop the movie for them to have conversations about
Yes.
this. And I kind of love that
Yeah.
this movie will take its time, not only developing the relationships of all these characters, but also like kind explaining the different, like why people feel the way they feel about the occult, and
Yes.
just also the
Yeah.
idea that there's a parapsychology convention. I kind of
which
love
is
that.
ostensibly
Yeah.
what our guy is here for.
Yeah.
The professor is in town because he's going to be speaking at a parapsychology convention, presumably as a skeptic. So it's kind of a skeptical parapsychology convention.
But then he
this
ends
is
up
like
doing the hypnosis thing that's
Yeah.
totally relevant to his own curse that he's under.
well, I mean, the movie
Right.
the movie plays like a true mystery thriller where there's a thing going on that's being investigated by our hero while he continues doing everything else that he was planning on doing, and that's pretty cool. So everything goes towards this mystery of what killed the uncle, and now that supposedly Dr. Holden has been cursed, will he also be killed? And so every scene
and
pushes us towards learning about that.
And I think also that is probably where the hesitation towards, hey, if you show the demon at the beginning, it's less of a mystery. It's harder to pull off the is it real, is the occult real in this world or not kind of thing, because you've seen a demon.
Mhm.
If you do that early on, it becomes the best you can hope for is if it's not real, then it's going to be almost a Scooby-Doo. Oh, look, it's somebody dressed as a demon.
Well, and
Yes,
then Holden, the
And
thing
so
about
that's
knowing,
probably why it's why it was such a hot button, because if you show it, then Holden can't be right
right,
the whole time.
and so he
And
ends
so the
up
mystery
seeming
is-
kind of
is
like an
already there.
asshole because he's constantly
Right.
going, which isn't true, which isn't the case, which they're just wrong, which you're wrong,
Sure.
and you're just like, dude,
Well-
like open your mind a little bit.
So, and they tell him
But-
that throughout, like,
Yeah.
why are you
Here's
so
the thing,
close-minded?
though,
But
like,
it is the
a
age-old. Go ahead, Drew, and then I'll go to mine.
a cult of people worshiping the devil can still be dangerous even if there are no demons.
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, of course.
Well, yeah, any
Well,
people, and that's
what-
the truth for religion too, where it's like if you're willing to kill because of your religion,
Sure.
then you're dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, but also it plays into, in of the time, you have a lot of occult stuff in media, and so this idea of skepticism versus occult with mediums and such. But there's the age-old discussion of, so Holden's going to go, I'm very intelligent, and my intelligence tells me this is all bunk.
Yeah.
So when he meets somebody like Carswell, who is very learned, very intelligent, he also can't believe, you must be, you'll fall for anything, and you're not as intelligent, you're not as bright as me because you believe in this stuff. So he's going to say, I'm elevated and I'm hyper intelligent, and no matter how erudite you are, how learned you are, you're still kind of stupid for believing this crap.
Right.
And Carswell goes, I'm more intelligent because I believe this stuff, because I understand that there are things beyond our control and can admit that, or he actually controls it, right? So
right.
there are things that beyond most people's imagination, and I'm smarter than you because you won't open up to that. And that,
well, and I think you've just
that
described
interplay of intelligence is something that we see throughout our lives.
Yeah.
And it's done all the time, but it's also fascinating in that each person believes themselves to be truly the brightest.
No, you're making a great point.
That's a fascinating
people
thing.
go through life going, because I believe in this religion, I'm smarter than everybody else because I know the truth. And because I don't believe in God at all, I'm smarter than you because I know the truth. And because I believe, because I'm this party, I'm smarter than you because I know the truth. And because I'm this other party, I'm smarter than you because I know the truth. And you're right. It's like nobody's ever going to win because everybody believes that about themselves.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that interplay is key to this, but it also is what we go through daily, depending on what it is. But their interplay is fascinating because of that, and that's part of what makes it interesting. And the colleagues as well, who they've stratified, so it makes a really good setup overall.
It does. I agree.
So the movie divides up really into set pieces, and we should talk about there's a seance here, and several weird things about this. So the Irish girl that he's been running around with, Joanna, invites
the niece of the dead professor.
The niece of the dead professor invites over a medium to do a seance to try to figure out if it's true that there's really a curse on Dr. Holden. But what's interesting is that the medium she invites is not even secretly Carswell's mom. Lives with him.
No. She's not the medium. She's just the person who brought the medium over.
Oh, that's right.
The medium is the guy.
Yeah, but she's the organizer of the seance.
Yeah, she's the organizer,
which is fascinating. I mean, in other words, like, it's such a small world that they live in that she's like that because obviously you would think that's so close to the enemy, basically, that there's no way in heck that you would invite her over. Instead, you should invite maybe another medium from another town.
Well, and I think the reason for that is to allow Holden to continue to be a skeptic.
Totally. But it's so bizarre, and it's also one of the bizarre choices. I mean, if I sat down to invent a bunch of characters, it wouldn't necessarily occur to me, hey, you know what the supervillain needs? He needs a dotty sort of Aunt Martha kind of mom who just
but it fits with how he is, because he has this like affable thing, like he's like, I'm taking care of my aging mother, and again, have you tried her ice cream? Like he seems like he might be, other than the fact that he's like a hardcore Satan, like he seems like he might actually be like kind of he's a good host, like he might be an okay guy.
Yeah, it's really funny. So that seance happens. Joey, what happens at the seance, by the way?
Yeah, I was
because I cannot remember.
The actual medium guy, he does feel like a fraud when you first see him. Like, you've got these women who start singing, and then he goes into his convulsions, and then he's got some quote unquote Scottish persona, McGregor or whatever. He's got another guy. Like, he's got different voices that he does. It just feels very fake. And then suddenly he gets kind of possessed by Professor Harrington, the uncle. So then you're like, and his niece is like, that really sounds like my uncle. And he's saying, Holden needs to be careful, whatever he says. And then he sees the demon again. He starts screaming. So you're like, oh, so it's kind of like Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg, where Whoopi Goldberg's pretty much like putting on a big show, but then suddenly she actually does get a ghost, like get a ghost come through. So it kind of feels like that, where I don't know that this guy is necessarily for real most of the time, but he does have the gift.
So are we to
understand,
and please forgive my ignorance, but are we to understand that when he suddenly begins speaking in the voice of the uncle, that this is real. The uncle is
This is
really
the uncle.
speaking from beyond the grave.
Absolutely, he is, because we know for a fact that that's the demon manifest, and there's no reason for the medium to
Yeah,
know
well,
that.
why would otherwise? Why would Carswell even allow for him to meet
Yeah.
with him? I don't think he was planning on the uncle to be the spirit that they talk to, because he helps him. He helps him out.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
I think that I think that most likely he didn't think that this was any real threat
Yeah.
to him. I mean, he's even sitting outside in the car waiting for his
Mhm.
mom to be done.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Done with this seance. Yes. And the other big set piece, there's a scene that's missing in our version where Holden goes to a farm to get permission to do to hypnotize a man who has fallen into a catatonic trance, who previously apparently had been cursed and avoided death, having been handed the key to the whole plot, by the way, which is a strip of
Parchment.
parchment paper on which some runes have been written.
And
And
as long as you give it back to the person who gave it to you, and they willingly accept it, you can escape death, which is what he does.
right, you have to be able to give it back. That's what they learn when they
Right.
do the hypnotism. Anyway, there's a
The
scene
trick,
where they
the
go
trick being
and
that usually it destroys itself, though.
right.
Yeah.
So
You're always in
on a
danger of it
normal,
burning
for
itself
for
up.
most of the time, it gets destroyed somehow, and that's which is a pretty great trick for the demons.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that was the
whoever
most
summons it,
irritating scene to me of all, was when his he figures out Holden figures out that he has the parchment. In fact, he and Harry and the niece, they figure out that he actually has the parchment, and then the parchment tries to get into the fire, but it gets stuck on the grate, and so then they're just watching it. It's trying to get into the fire. I'm like, grab it! I'm like screaming at TV, grab
No,
it!
his skepticism at that point. Again, I think I'm okay with skepticism, but
Yeah.
pragmatism is also
Yeah.
a trait I think you should have. Like,
Yeah.
well, you know what? Let me grab that just because.
Just in case.
When the
Let's
parchment
see how
paper
this plays out.
gets up of it appears to be trying to throw itself in the fire, it doesn't help him to go, well, maybe it's just a draft. You should grab the parchment paper.
Or she could have grabbed it. She was just sitting there too. I
Yes.
guess she didn't want to
Yeah.
touch it. Is probably the thing. For her, she probably is like, no, I'm not touching it.
Anyway, that scene is missing. We have the sort of, in a way, the second seance. We have the scientific seance where they hypnotize this catatonic man. We have that scene, and
Who
it
is
is
part of the satanic cult.
it's a great scene. It's a really good scene. Where they bring him out of his catatonic state, and he becomes violent, and he also tells them stories, and then he flings himself to his death. It's a great sequence,
Out a
and
window,
it's
yeah.
really good. We're missing the scene that is in the longer version of the movie, where Holden goes to a farm to get permission from the people who cared about this guy to bring him out of his catatonic state. And apparently he experiences weird hallucinations while he's on that farm. I don't know what happens in that scene. Drew,
Do you remember,
you've
Drew?
probably seen it at some point.
What now?
Do you remember a scene where they're at the farm of the guy that they put under the hypnosis before he's hypnotized?
Yeah. They go to visit him, or they go to the farm because they're doing the investigation of like because he was arrested for murder and put in an insane asylum, and
Mhm.
they're, if I recall, they're trying to find I think it's more pages of the book.
Okay.
I'm sure somebody on Facebook tomorrow is going to correct me on this. So that was not in what I watched today, although you've been helpful because I was trying to recall if I watched the Continental.
Right. That's what I'm saying. None of us got this
This
scene.
is definitely the regular
American.
cut today.
But Danny Peary writes about this. He says that what's missing is this scene where he goes out to the farm. He may be looking for documents, but he also has to get their permission.
Yeah, I believe he is looking for pages of the book.
He has hallucinations. So anyway, I'd love to know what his hallucinations are.
And I think
the
scene where he goes to Stonehenge
Yeah,
is
we did see that at the beginning. That's
directly
actually how it opens.
yeah, but there's a scene of him driving the Stonehenge, and I believe that is directly after
Yes.
the scene at the
Yeah,
farm
and
because
we
he's
got that.
already
We
out.
have
He's
that
already
part.
out in the countryside.
Mm.
But man, now I'm wanting to see to like hunt down like there is a Blu-ray with both of these on it, and now I'm totally
Oh.
gonna buy it.
That's cool.
Yeah,
but
I keep thinking about that too now that I've seen.
Well,
There's a
this
really
is-
expensive one, and there's another one. I think there's 2 discs that I may have to get.
I for a movie that I really like basically every time they play this at the Draft House, I go and see it. Like if it would be cheaper for me just to own it at this point. But yeah, this
if there was an 80s version of this, I bet they would have had some kind of demon catch up to the guy instead of hurling himself out of the window. He gets immolated or some, something bad devil wise would happen, which I would, I could just picture that in a newer production. I don't know if it would be as effective, but I could just picture that's how that would play out.
You brought up Drag Me to Hell, which has a lot of this, and it's just even its like plot structure. But I am I am going to be curious about forever what the 80s version that would have had like a ton of animatronic special effects and crazy probably would have been way more violent than it needed to be. But honestly, the whole seance scene is pretty horrific on its own, just with the guy like screaming in agony. Like I find that scene very difficult to watch.
Oh yeah. No, it's really effective and horrifying.
Like I said, the hypnotism scene and the seance scene are mirror images of one another. And both of them involve a lot of this, very unnerving, unconscious, emoting by these people who are in a trance.
I want to know how they got the hospital to agree to them to do it, because this guy's an allegedly
that's a super good question.
Murderer.
Like
in horror movie land would this have been okayed?
Well, again, you remember that I guess it's a different time, but also there's a time period where, hey, I'm a doctor, and the doctor, then go. I mean, who am I to refute that?
Well, yeah, and if
but
I'm
also,
sure that they're
also rich. If you're wealthy and a doctor, all of those.
Well, and
doors
it's a
open up,
parapsychology conference, so theoretically, criminally
Right.
insane people would kind of be perfect for that. By the way, I'm wondering if they had insurance that covers the fact that guy just like jumped out a window during their hypnosis thing.
Yes,
I think that I think that convention would have been shut down.
Yeah, for real. Well, it looks like it was.
Well, yeah. Again, and another thing that's fascinating about this and why it ties into the parapsychology part is this age-old, hypnosis. Because there's a magic trick hypnosis. Become a chicken or whatever.
Yeah.
And all of the stuff like, the hypnotist died and now that person's permanently a chicken, or you name it.
Right.
And all of that versus hypnosis in actual psychology, and how much of that is bunk and how much is that real. And so there's all of that stratification of what's the magic version of this. Right. And can you do this versus like, if you'll believe in this amount of hypnosis, why won't you believe in this amount of hypnosis?
Right. Yeah, because an actual
how that all plays
hypnotist will
out.
tell you that you will never do anything that you don't want to do. You're always in control. But in the movies, it's never like you saying. It's like one of my top 5 favorite movies is Now You See Me, that with the Mad Magicians, and Woody Harrelson's character is that kind of hypnotist where he can just make people admit things and do things that they would never want to do.
Right.
And the movie doesn't work unless that's the case.
It's what I love is that they're at a convention, so it's like it seems to be like 4 p.m. or later, and okay, this part of the convention we've all gone into this lecture hall, and these 2 speakers are gonna like bring a catatonic murderer out of a trance and get him to say some stuff. Well, that sounds cool. And then I'm thinking, what's after this? I mean, he threw himself out a window, so that panel's over. What are they doing now? Like, all these guys are going to stand up and look at their programs and go, "Huh? Well, I wonder what there is at 5:30. I guess I'm going to go listen
No,
to
I
Frank
think it's
Miller."
shut down. I
You're like,
really do. I think
I,
it's Frankie.
Well, yeah, but I'm
yeah,
sure
everybody
they
just
did.
kind of looks
but,
around and goes, "Huh?" So,
Yeah.
but
meet you at the
what
bar.
would they?
I guess
have
it's I
said
guess it's
after
time
that?
for the cocktail. Yeah, I'll see you in the foyer.
They were gonna have a steak and
Right.
beer dinner or something afterwards, and they were gonna
Right.
compare notes
But
on
yeah,
demonology.
I do want to see what happens. Like, well, after the what is it next? Well, crystal balls and you, or
Right.
Well, and the crystal ball person's going, so do I still do my talk?
Are we still doing this or not?
I'm still getting my per diem, right? Like my travel expenses are still covered, right? Like I spent a lot.
I showed up here, man. It's
I'm
not
in
my fault.
freaking London.
And
Yes.
and you're at the convention. I think maybe Jason and I have had that at a con where we go, I mean, they haven't said anything about what they promised, but do we ask? Like, do we is that
Oh my gosh.
a thing where guests do? Like all those stuff.
Yeah.
Like that guy, the poor person who's after the suicide attempt has to decide. Do I go?
Jason.
Or no, not suicide. I mean, actual suicide. The person after the suicide has to go. Do I ask or do I send them?
What
do
do
I
I do?
invoice
Right,
them? Like, how does-
exactly.
oh no.
No, Jason, tell the story about the New York con.
Which New York con?
The
What
one
are you
that got
talking about?
canceled.
Oh, well, that's funny. Yeah. Well, okay. I'll try to do this fairly quickly because that guy someday there needs to be a movie about him. So there was a con, a comic book convention that was going to be happening at Syracuse. And so this guy reached out to me and he goes, "Hey, you want to come talk about horror comics at my convention?" And I was like, "I'd love to go to Syracuse. Julia and I have a friend who went to college there. We'll go up and we'll do the con and then we'll spend the weekend at her awesome place, like in the Adirondacks, and it'll be a good time." So we set it up. I'm like, sounds good to me. I was always going to pay for my own ticket. It wasn't a really sweet deal, but it gave me an excuse to make the trip, right? So I was happy. So I set it up, and then about a week before the show, they sent me a note and said, "Hey, the con in Syracuse has been canceled." And I was like, "Well, whatever. I've already got my ticket. We'll just go early to the place in the Adirondacks, have a good time. It doesn't matter at all." Anyway, I found out later that a lot of other people were just deeply.
What was this guy's name?
Oh, you know who this is. This is Rick Olney. Yes.
Oh my lord.
Yeah.
Rick Olney
Yeah, there's
did
a
the same
whole
thing, only it was supposed to be in Florida.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is not the first.
It happened
Yeah,
again and
this
again.
is-
Not to me, but it did.
this
It
is
happened
the
again and
thing.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I, so it was one of those weird cases where a lot of people really got screwed. People who have to choose, I go to this con
Yeah.
or that con, they live off of the stuff they sell at cons. So it was to me, it was nothing. I literally never gave it a second thought.
Right.
Well,
you were also lucky that it didn't get canceled because of tangential satanic suicide.
Right.
So that's a plus.
Well, actually, we don't know if
that you know of.
That was why.
That you that I was gonna let me add that you know of. But luckily, as far as we know, that wasn't why.
It was so
just
funny.
some shady
Another
business.
interesting
or just
thing happened
not just
that
some shady
weekend.
business, but a lot of shady business.
we
Sorry,
were in
go
the
ahead,
Adirondacks. We're at this cabin with Julia and her friend. We had left our baby because this is when our oldest daughter was a baby, and we left her with my in-laws to watch for like this long weekend. So we're hanging out by the lake, reading and roasting marshmallows, whatever you do. And then the cops come around and they go, "Hey, you guys okay over here?" And we're like, "Yeah." They come to the cabin and they go, "Well, nobody has been answering any phones." We're like, "Oh, well, the phones are out. Nobody has a cell phone." And they go, "Well, your in-laws were real worried about you." And we were like, "Well,
But we
why
did
would
have
they be
cell phone,
worried?"
but we did have a cell phone. We just didn't have reception at the cabin.
Well, whatever. Anyway, the question was, why would they be worried? And it turned out they had wanted to call because of some reason or another. And so they looked up the show that I was going to. They found out it was canceled. And so here they're like, well, why would Jason say he's going to a show and then it was canceled? And then in their mind, I guess we had left for Egypt or something. Who knows? And so they
He said he was staying at a friend's house. Oh, I thought you were supposed to stay at your other. They said they were staying at another friend's house.
yeah. So
The age-old
So-
sitcom. Wow, that's
so they sent the cops.
But
if-
like at first when you said we left our child and you didn't really specify, as if like that could have been. Well, we left our child in the woods with the
in
wolves
the car. Yeah, in the
because they're
car.
good at this. Yeah.
No,
Luckily,
we
you
left
added it at the in-laws, but at
with
first
my
it was
parents,
like, well,
it's such a funny
the
thing.
Sasquatch would find her.
I have to
It's
say,
fine.
I have no idea if I would have bothered sending the police to this cabin. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think so.
I
Doesn't
know that I would, because being the kind of parent that I am. I know that as soon as I don't know where my kids are for like an hour, I start getting more and more nervous. So if it was literally like 24 hours and I have no idea if my kid is alive or dead, I'm gonna start freaking out. So I can see how that happened. But
Yeah, I
to
mean,
us, it just seemed funny because
what
we
they
were like,
said
"No,
was,
we're
well, you know,
fine."
normally you'd call every day, and I was thinking, you know, would I call every day? I mean, it
No,
seems to me they're with their
I would.
grandparents.
They're talking about me because I was the one who was like really concerned about how the baby was doing, so
Right.
yeah.
So that was hilarious. That was yes. So Rick Olney got the police called on me in a sense. You know, I blame
That's pretty funny.
I blame poor Rick.
Well,
Someday
that story went a lot longer than I expected it to.
I want
Anyway.
I want a biopic of
Satan.
Rick Olney, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So, all right. Is there anything else we should call out about this film?
Sweet ass
before we-
ending.
Well,
Dana
the ending,
Andrews.
yeah.
man.
Yes.
The
please.
ending is
Okay.
Like that is like some true blue.
So
Great.
start with the
Guile.
murder. Start with the Orient Express. Start with the train, Drew, and tell us what happens in.
So
in the end.
after the guy commits suicide, Dana Andrews is finally like, okay, I've had enough. And he goes to try and find Carswell. Actually, I skipped over something. The girl, she gets abducted by Carswell.
But we don't know that.
We don't
Joanna.
know that until
We
they
see
wind
an
up-
arm. We see an
Joanna's her
ominous
name.
arm. Yeah, we see an
Mhm.
ominous arm that's like keeps cropping up, following her. So Dana Andrews calls the Carswell, says like, okay, I need to talk to him, and they're like, talk to him, he's taking this train. So he follows him to the train station, gets a ticket to the exact same train he's going on, and ends up in his compartment. And there we see Joanna, and she's in a trance, and they start having this sort of verbal spatting where Dana Andrews admits that he was wrong. And it's kind of the same thing as the beginning. He's like, okay, the demon is real. Is there anything you can do about it? And he's like, oh, well, you're too late. But Dana Andrews has found out that he can break the curse by passing the runes, which is a lyric in the
Right.
Rocky Horror Picture Show. Passing the runes back the Carswell. And you have this great scene where Carswell, as cool as he has been cool as a cucumber this whole time, is starting to get nervous as every time like he refuses to take anything from Holden, or if he gives him something, like for example they smoke a cigarette, he hands him a matchbook and he's like, no, I'm not going to take the matchbook. It's so good.
Yeah.
It won't
Yeah,
take.
it's really good too, because he's so nervous, because he knows it's like a window of like 10 minutes. Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he knows that his adversary is actually really intelligent. So he's
Right.
not going to take any chances, because most of the people, either the rune's been destroyed or they don't know enough. But this is truly an adversary. This is the Bond villain kind of thing where he goes, you know what, I better take Bond seriously at this point. Like he's done
Yes.
enough stuff. And so each time, but it's really great because each thing he's like, well, would he do this now? I better not take the chance. Now you can have the cigarettes. hey, here's the
Yeah.
matchbook back. Oh, you know what?
No, that's not
Cool.
my book. Yeah. No, and then he's got
Yeah,
these
it's
cops. He's
great.
trying to get away from him, and he's like, "No, you're staying
Right.
here." And these
Well,
cops show
yeah,
up, and
because
they
he's
go,
like, "You're gonna get ripped to shreds with me because we're gonna
"Right."
hang out till the demon shows
So,
up."
so the cops show up, and they're like, "Oh, well, we were theoretically here because Holden was having you followed, but it looks like you're the one who's in trouble because he's like trying to keep you here." So he's like, "Yeah, I got to get out of here." And they're like, "Oh, okay." Well, and so Holden's like, "Oh, isn't this your book?" "No, that's not my book. That's not my book." "Oh, well," and then the cops are like, "Isn't this your stuff?" And then he's like, "Oh, yeah, my suitcase and my briefcase or whatever it is in my coat." And then he's like, grabs the coat and he goes, "Oh, you passed them, didn't you?" And he just realizes it, and just then he like looks in the coat pocket and pulls out the parchment, and the parchment flies off, and he's like running after it. Fortunately for him, the train is stopped. He didn't have to like jump off the moving train or anything. And so he starts running down the track after the thing. It's great. It's such a good scene.
Yeah.
Well,
But
and
you know, before we get into the demon part, though, I do want to mention when he decides to, Holden decides to break in to Carswell's mansion.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we forgot about
to
the
get more
kitty cat.
information, and at the point there's a cat, there's all this stuff, but it's great because again, Carswell's so awesome at flexing. He doesn't go, "Hey, why are you in here?" He at first he's trying to, he drops this. He's picked up this poker and he drops it. Ow! Carswell goes, "Hey, why'd you drop the poker? Like, why didn't you hit me?"
Yeah.
He doesn't say that, but he means it. And
Yeah.
he goes, "Oh, it was hot." He's, "No, it's
like,
not.
"No,
Here,
it's not
here,
hot."
oh, have it back." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I just left some demons around." Oh,
Well,
that's a
yeah,
demon.
no, and he's just been
And then-
he's just been attacked. Holden's just been attacked by this cat that turned into like a cheetah or something,
Yeah.
or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then he's like,
But-
"No, that's just a cat, and plus the demon that I have protecting the."
Yeah, it's like, I leave those around. If you read the books, some of Conan's wizard adversaries tend to be that way.
Yes.
Hey, it sucks that you're here, but why would I? You can't harm me. They always they always underestimate.
Yes.
So he goes, he doesn't report him. He doesn't say, "Why are you breaking in?" And he goes, "Oh, that's the kind of stuff of you would do." But because he knows that the time is short for Holden, he doesn't even treat him as anything but a kind of a nuisance and "Oh, look, that's quaint.
Yeah.
You broke in here. But I got this under control because I've also left demons around and can make a poker seem hot. You're not on my same league at all."
Well, and
I
then
just thought that's just super great.
It
the
is.
second most irritating thing in the whole movie for me is that he goes, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go then." It's like he starts to go back out through the woods, and he goes, "You don't have to go through the woods. You can go down the drive. I'll turn the light on for you." He goes, "No, I have one superstition, and that's always go back the way I came." And I'm like, that's the stupidest superstition I've ever heard of. So he like goes into the woods, and it's like full like Sleeping Beauty, and Snow White, where it's like the woods are like creepy as hell, and then the smoke
that's
effect
got the
starts.
best special effect in the whole
It is
movie,
the
though.
smoke effect is so
No, I'm
good.
not talking. I mean, the smoke effect
Oh.
is cool, but like when they have like the demon footprints like coming out of
yeah, totally,
that's
totally.
so creepy.
It is super creepy. You're right.
No, it's really good. I was just saying it would be amazing to also, if I would see there could have been a different flex where you see him just shutting demons down. Like, no, it's cool. Just let him. He's only got a couple days. Just let him go. He's like, basically just turns off. Like you see
like
demons partying that would have normally taken him out. He's like, that would have been an amazing flex as well. Just it's good. Don't worry.
Yeah, they have that's the thing in The Good Place where they have demons that they just are like turn on and turn off, and also Lucifer, where it's like, okay, yeah, you can help me with scaring this guy. Okay, now you can stop.
Right.
Yeah, but it would,
Yeah.
I love that effect, but it would have been kind of funny and awesome to see him just really go, I could show him, but where's the fun in that? Let's just let him escape through the woods because he's got this one superstition. Okay, Mr. Skeptic. That would have been awesome. Just letting him be like, oh, see, there weren't demons there all in either way, and there were actually like a dozen of them. That would have been amazing.
Funny.
But I love that interplay. But yeah, going back to the end, we get the appointed hour strikes, and he's unable to dispel it or give it back, and the demon appears again. This just amazing smoke effect, and then the shadowy rends him. Oh, that's just so, I love that puppeteer violent rending shadow demon. It's just so good. And also what I love is that goes back to the woodcuts and the illustrations that we've seen of the demon in profile, and exactly how violent that is. And it coincides, with this really great, and again, this kind of Hitchcock thing where they're cutting. Is it the demon? Is it a train? Is the demon gonna be the train? Is that how they're gonna? Because of course they blame it on the train at the end, which you can
But we
sing some of
see
those lyrics if you want.
ourselves that is not the train. That we see that he manages to roll out of the way of the train and gets picked up physically by the demon, but nobody else sees that.
Shreds.
Well, see, that's interesting that you say it, because that's not. I could not see that in what the one I saw. It does not look like he gets torn to shreds. It looks like he just gets spanked and then thrown. So it's pretty hilarious.
Oh no, he's like shaking him. He's like shaking him and pulling.
But I didn't see that, so to me it wasn't scary. It was funny. But if you saw it as tearing him to shreds, then I could see why you would. Think
And
it was horrifying.
even funny in a horrific kind of way is still pretty effective. It's I also thought it was delightful when the demon just sort of then kind of flings him to the ground,
he's like,
done with you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for all the yummy souls you gave me.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
This is my,
and that's the thing. If you have that kind of power, well, that's the thing. If you have that kind of power, and why it's always fascinated me with people who will play with that power is it always has a potential to backfire, especially if you read a lot about and it's kind of the movie occult version, but there's all these rules like, well, make sure you close the circle when you do this. And I'm of the opinion that even if you I'm like, for example, like the Large Hadron Collider, where they go, well, there's a 99.99% chance that we won't get sucked into a black hole and oblivion is the universe. And I go, yeah, but I deal with technology stuff all the time. And that 0.01, I don't like that.
But again, Tony, that's everything in our lives. Everything in our lives. Like we create a new improvement and suddenly we've got global warming, or we create a new improvement, suddenly everybody's getting cancer. I mean, we're always doing that shit.
Right.
So
but
what
you
Julie
can
is
mitigate
saying
for that. What I'm saying is
you should summon demon.
Exactly.
No, I'm the opposite of that, because so much of my life is risk mitigation for technology and such. I'm of the opinion, and there's some things that have an acceptable risk, but there's and it's a scale. When the end result is summons a demon that rends my soul or others, or rips a hole in or something that rips a hole in the universe, the perspective of that is, I want 100% of those things. That's different than I might burn my hand or any number of tiny things that could happen, right? That sliding scale means something. There are stakes that are higher.
Risk assessment. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
now
it's always fascinating to me that someone would go, I mean, there's a chance.
Tony Salvaggio, what?
Demonic risk assessment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I'm always fascinated the people who will go, well, I get a lot out of this. So the small chance that I'll screw it up or that something will happen and my soul will eternally writhe in fire, is worth it. And I'm fascinated
at we do that all the time.
People who arrive at that.
We smoke, we eat crap, we drink.
No,
we
but that's different.
I don't
that's
know. I think
different.
It's
and the amount of time it takes to get cancer from smoking is not, I forgot to close the circle and now I am eternally burning.
Yeah,
Those
but doing
if
cocaine
you don't see how that's different, I don't know what to say.
I don't understand this argument, so I'm going to call it here, and we should move on
I just don't understand how you don't see that those are different, but that's okay.
All right, people can pick that up on the page. Let's get our final thoughts on on Curse of the Demon. Man alive. And I know that we've been all over the place, and for that I apologize. I'll do a better job of like moving us through the plot in the future. But
Oh,
I'm really
okay.
glad that Tony took us back to the break-in, because that was a piece that we definitely didn't want to miss. So
I
all
don't
right.
know. I guess by now, if people haven't, if you're a first time listener, I guess apologies are in order. If you've been here for a while, I don't know if it's different. So,
Right.
and you might like it because of that. I can't
That's
tell
true.
you.
It's a good
Or at
point.
least in spite of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
Well, true. All of this is true.
So
Some people call them A, B, and C.
yeah. It's Drew, Julia, Tony, and then I'll go. Drew, I don't know. Have we touched on what you wanted to touch on with Curse of the Demon? And is there anything else?
I think I would like, because every time we do one of these like Satanic Panic discussions, the question of which is whether or not something is or is not Satanic Panic. And I will say that I think there is a timetable on that, that we have gone back a little further on, but
Yeah.
I think you don't have those movies without this one. So I think talking about this within the context of the other movies we have done is fascinating, and I think this is a worthy movie in its own right, and one, unfortunately, that I think a lot of people know the demon from this, and they know it's a thing, but this is a movie that more often than not that I find that people have not seen it. So I think maybe, not that it's a super obscure movie, you can watch it on Amazon tonight if you want.
Yep.
But I'm saying go out of your way to see this if you haven't seen it, because it's an amazing little film, and I think it'll deepen your appreciation of stuff like Drag Me to Hell and like Witchboard and Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist and The Omen. R.I.P. Richard Donner, by the way. And all those movies that came after that, because this is a very important building block in occult horror, and I think it shows that sort of fear of the unknown, but also the fear of the diabolical, and I'm saying diabolical with a capital D, and the way that developed within our culture, because here you full on have like the sort of rational post World War II American man versus that occult horror before we got into the 60s, and the psychedelia of that muddying works so much, and I think there's something very interesting about that. But overall, I had a good time. You could say we were all over the place, but it was still fun to talk about, and I'm glad that we finally got around to doing this movie, because I think it is a true classic of the genre.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Julia, what are your thoughts?
I just think this has been a really fun conversation, very interesting. I love this film. I really think it's gorgeous. I mean, I think it is, like it has a lot. To me, it reminds me a lot of Alfred Hitchcock in some ways. I think it's been some really interesting themes, so I really enjoyed it. I don't know what we're doing next, but I did want to just mention a funny story that Jason was looking at. For some reason, he came across a movie that he saw as called Sensuous Vampires, but then he looked up and found that it was in another place called Vampire Hookers.
Yeah, it was originally called Vampire Hookers.
He was looking at an article about it, and the person was like, "Oh my gosh, the theme song is horrible." And Jason asks the Google, chick, it's like, "What is the theme song for Vampire Hookers?" And it's not, we don't have Siri, we have Google. So she goes, "They suck more than blood." It just made me laugh. It made me laugh so hard to hear her in her robot voice say, "They suck more than blood."
Yes.
Anyways, I don't know if that's going to come across our viewing schedule at some point in the near future, but if so, I just thought that was a funny.
I'm not sure.
Well, if you do, you have to sample that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Just sample that and insert it, because that's amazing.
And put it as the tagline, like audio tagline. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, that was super funny. All right, but yes, I enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for Drew for bringing that to us.
Oh, of course.
Tony, what are your thoughts? And by the way, I do know what movie is next, so I can tell you guys. Yeah.
I love this movie. it's really great if maybe you've watched a Hitchcock movie and you also love supernatural horror, so you want to get a little bit of that in the mix. I think this does that really well. The demon in it is iconic. You'll see it in videos. It gets mixed into things all the time. And I think that's fantastic. And like I said before, I am just thrilled about the lead up. The close-up demon looks a certain way and is iconic. But I wish I had seen more of the lead up with this like plumes of smoke kind of reveal. I'm a sucker for that kind of effect. I think the ripple effect of this movie, watching it now, I see what I think are influences of all kinds of horror movies that I really dig. And I think that's great. When you catch something, you go, I see somebody's trick, you know? It's like a good magic trick that you see and I saw this person did that in the 30s and now you're doing it. Okay. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love picking up on that. When you see something that's paced or, even if that person was doing it subconsciously, when something sticks with somebody and that becomes part of what is in there, that's happened in comic books that Jason and I have written where I go, hey, by the way, this scene, I didn't mean to rip this off, but this is a lot like this other thing, completely unintentionally. And it's really amazing when you see that played out. The cast is great. I love the interplay between the protagonists. It's a great setup, beautifully done, and it looks really great. Black and white just pops and makes a lot of those effects also just even more iconic in my opinion.
Perfect. Thank you very much. To me, this is I think the answer about what is our Satanic Panic series. I think it has evolved where we don't do necessarily movies that are part of the Satanic Panic. This is in the summer we do movies that either illustrates or are important to just essentially demonism in the movies, and you can't find a more important demonic thriller than Curse of the Demon. It is the grandfather, with the exception of Haxan, which the silent film that Tony pointed out. This is a deeply important movie. I'm so happy that we watched it because I don't think I may have seen it once in the past, but this gave me a chance to watch it with like a sincerity and a seriousness that I'm really happy that we took that time. So thank you, Drew. By the way, our next film, just in case you want to know, is here's what's coming up. We've got Summer of Fear, which is a Wes Craven movie next. So we're coming back to the 70s. And then after that, To the Devil, a Daughter, which is a late Hammer movie with Christopher Lee. And that is a movie that was made in the wake of the Omen pictures, which I think is going to be super duper cool. And then we're going to have one more on the 25th. We were going to begin the Cat People series then, but that will be an episode right before we take a break of a couple of weeks. So now I'm thinking that for the 25th, we might want to do one more, maybe The Omen, because Richard Donner just died. I don't know.
Not Sensuous Vampires?
Maybe Sensuous Vampires / Vampire Hookers as a one-off.
We did The Omen.
We did The Omen. We did The Omen.
We did The Omen when we did Evil Babies.
Yeah, so I guess Vampire Hookers.
My favorite. My
At
favorite.
At least I think we did.
No, we definitely did The Omen. That was my part of one of my retrospective offerings.
Well, there we go. So I think the 25th will probably be a one-off of Sensuous Vampires, which because why not? Honestly.
But
so
it's probably going to be really bad, Tony. So don't be surprised.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of quality you're expecting.
I don't know how you can be surprised by that. I don't know. It sounds fun. I mean, I like fun, just weird crap. So not to say this is crap.
I know that I wasn't there for Tony's epic rant, but I feel like I complain far more than him, and yet Tony is got this rep that you keep going back to, that he's a complainer, and I think he's kind of he's a team player through and through.
It wasn't the complaining; it was the surprise. The fact that he was surprised that it was awful.
Well, I think it was more of that Jason had talked about this movie for so incredibly long I assumed that Jason had just seen this a million times on cable.
We're talking
And
about Embrace
that
of
was
the
what
Vampire,
prompted
just
that.
in case you
Yeah,
were...
yeah.
Right,
That was what
Yeah.
prompted that. Was
The
just
movie that broke Tony.
I just thought it meant a lot to Jason because we've been talking about that movie for years. That was what was
Well,
hilarious to me.
it is my favorite
And yet,
moment of our whole podcast.
wow, I'm glad I can make people happy there. Entertainment, all in the guy,
Yep.
all for entertainment, right?
Yep.
For you,
All right.
Damien, it's all for you.
Yes. For you, Damien. Okay. Let's get our endorsements. Like whatever you guys have been up to, watching this week, listening to, whatever you want to share. Same order. Drew, what do you got for us?
I feel a little weird with my endorsements because I feel like they're, all of horror Twitter are already talking about these two movies, but I had a really good time with both of them. First one, I watched two new horror movies this weekend. It was a good weekend to watch horror movies, apparently. I watched Werewolves Within, which is, it is a horror movie, but it's not really a horror movie till like kind of it's more of a mystery comedy. It's actually it would be really easy if this was an older movie for me to see Bob Hope starring in it, strangely enough. And it's the second werewolf movie in less than a year to really lean on the Coen brothers for a lot of its sort of quirky small town comedy, but really funny, really good chemistry between the two leads. Just don't go in expecting a wall-to-wall, monster movie. It doesn't really become a monster movie until like the latter half of it. But I had a lot of fun watching it. The characters make it worth it. The other one, which is more of a traditional horror movie, I caught Fear Street 1994 on Netflix, which is the first part of a 3-movie trilogy that they are gotta, never doubt that Netflix will get ambitious with things. They're doing 3 movies in a trilogy, one new every week in July, and this first one is kind of they're based on R.L. Stine books. I haven't read those. I couldn't tell you what the source material was like, but the movie itself is kind of a pastiche of 1990s horror films of all things, which is weird because usually when people send up horror, that's not really their go-to decade. But like from like the excessive use of like alt rock on like the soundtrack to like the way the movie looks to a lot of the special effects choices and everything, they did a really good job of kind of creating something that feels like it might have come out like right after Scream came out. And I think that's pretty cool. Aside from that, the characters, all the young people in the cast are actually really likable, and they pull off the really hard to do trick of creating characters in a slasher movie that you actually like. So, my hat's off to that. And it's not a movie that I was really expecting anything from. Jamie was actually the one that was like, oh, I used to read those books, let's watch it. And I was like, okay. And I had a really good time with it. And now I'm kind of excited for the other two. The next one, especially because it's set in 1978, and it looks like it's like that's gonna be a pastiche of like summer camp horror films from like the late 70s, early 80s, like Friday the 13th and Sleepaway Camp and things like that. So hats off for them creating something that was enjoyable that I had little to no expectations of, because like I'm not like of the age group that you say R.L. Stine. I'm like, oh, that's my childhood, because I'm not. But this was a lot of fun, and I hope the other two are just as much fun.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Julia, what about you?
Oh gosh, I've been watching so much great stuff. It's been really fun. I have, let's see, I'm trying to figure out where you can find this one thing that I want to talk about. Prime. I think they're all Prime. Anyway, so yes. Okay. So Jason and I went to see the actual movie theater again, because we're trying to do that as much as possible now. And we went to see Summer of Soul, which is a wonderful documentary made by Questlove of The Roots. And he won a Sundance award for it. And it is just he is featuring this festival that happened in 1969 that was the Harlem Soul Festival. I can't remember exactly what they called it, but it was basically they called it the Black Woodstock, but it didn't,
Yeah.
or at least that's what they tried to market it as afterwards. But the footage just kind of, the guy who filmed it couldn't get it sold to anybody, and so it just sat in his basement for 50 years, and then somehow it came to the attention of Questlove, and he decided to make a documentary about it, and it's just so great. It's like all these amazing musicians that we all, at least heard in our childhood, if we don't still all the time. It's like Stevie Wonder and Gladys Knight and Nina Simone, all these just great people, and a bunch of great bands. And so that was a lot of fun. It made me really happy. I smiled the whole time. Then I've watched two, I believe they're both Amazon Prime. I'm trying to see if this one is, but anyway, Nobody, which is with Bob Odenkirk. It's just kind of I'm just going to say it's an Equalizer movie, but with Bob Odenkirk.
Yes,
That was
basically.
a really
Yeah.
fun film. I really enjoyed that one. And then the one that's been getting just tons of advertising is The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt. And that's a really fun, time travel film. And so they're both just fun movies to watch if you're just looking for something that's, not going to make you think very hard. But Summer of Soul was joyful and great.
It really is. And by the way, Drew, so a couple of years ago, Jamie recommended a documentary called What Happened, Miss Simone, which was about Nina Simone. And that included some of the
Yeah.
footage from this same festival. So that was a really cool film to go back and watch right after watching Summer of Soul. And she had
Mhm.
recommended that, and it really was very good. So cool. Tony, what about you?
Several things actually. Let's see. Oh, Nobody was great. I enjoyed that. Just as yes, it is an equalizer. You could pair it with some Charles Bronson movies. That would be fine too.
Mhm.
Yeah, if hyperviolence is what you want, then it delivers. Everybody looks like they're having fun in it too, and there's characters that show up, actors that show up that you go, oh, okay, that's cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. I wish I could have seen it in the theater. It plays really well. My main endorsement is actually I waited to watch this with a friend, and if you have the ability to watch movies in 3D, then I highly, and if you don't, this is a really great martial arts movie regardless. Kino Lorber put out Dynasty 3D on Blu-ray, and it includes the anaglyph, which is the kind of red blue 3D, and stereoscopic, but you have to have the right glasses, etc. I watched that this past Friday and was just blown away. Probably one of my favorite, if not the favorite 3D movie I've ever seen. I love martial arts movies, so yeah, I'm going to be biased. But in addition to just the 3D gags that they do, that are, hey, let's shove a sword this way, let's throw things at the camera. There's like all kinds of that stuff, but just the scene setup as well. It's just beautiful. The way they've decided to use foliage in 3D, etc. It goes beyond just we're gonna throw things at the screen, and that's super fun. But I just had a blast watching this movie, and I look on the Kino Lorber site, and it's like $13, which is a steal if you can watch it in 3D. I'm just gonna go out. It's a steal if you just like martial arts movie. Dynasty 3D. It just blew my mind. I can't wait to show it to more people. I love it. Thanks to Kino Lorber for putting that out. I am, of course, saddened by the passing of Richard Donner. So many movies that have influenced my love of cinema and my enjoyment of being in the theater. I could go on, but I would feel remiss if I didn't give him a shout out. And just, wherever you are, thanks for just amazing memories and amazing cinematic experiences that live, as long as humanity loves cinema, there's movies that he was involved in that are just flat out amazing. A couple of other things. We've been watching Sweet Tooth, which I really enjoy. I've been really enjoying that. And I also noticed not too long before I got on the podcast that it looks like Prime has put up the Gamera movies, and judging by the covers, they're probably the remasters that happened. So if you didn't buy the box set and you have Prime, you can now binge all of the remastered Gamera movies, and that makes me so happy that everybody can watch this crazy flying turtle. The original era and the 3 movies that came later. It's so cool. I love that box set. And our friend Matt Frank, did artwork and stuff. But so it looks like, judging by the covers on Amazon, that that's up there. So your week is set if you like kaiju movies. And then finally, I'm going to say I went to, I talked about going to Music Fest last weekend. And one of the bands, I'd known through Facebook and I'd listened to their stuff on Bandcamp and on, streaming. But buying a CD for me and just listen to it in my car while I'm driving around is a huge thing for me, especially driving at night, because I used to do that all the time because I had to drive so much to go places when I was teenager. But the band Thunder Horse, just that album, that CD's been spinning in my car front to back whenever I'm driving more now to go to practice and such. And they're cool people, and that album is just great. I recommend that. That's my preferred experience, is actually an album front to back. And I like crafting those when I record them, but I really dig their sound. Not listening to it in just kind of pieces whenever it comes up, which is also cool. But I know that's a lot of stuff, but I watched and listened to a lot more stuff lately. If you have, like I said, if you have the ability to watch 3D, Dynasty 3D has all of it in spades. It's just super great.
Thank you very much. If you have any thoughts about anything that we have discussed, you should come to the Facebook page and talk to us. We will be back next week with Wes Craven. I cannot wait to discuss Summer of Fear, and everybody be kind to one another. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Bye.